going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you haven't already seen my first video, go and check that out. I've got a 17 F250. Today we're going to be installing the S&B cold air intake. It's the part number 75-5085. Go ahead and start getting this thing out of the box and see what we got. It is windy out here today, so excuse the wind noise. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and get started. I've got basic 3/8 drive, shallow and deep sockets, 2 needle nose pliers, panel remover. This comes in handy when you got to remove the little plastic retainer clips. Your basic 3/8 short and longer extensions. A couple screwdrivers. You're going to need a couple Torx bits. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing you're going to want to do is disconnect the battery, negative and positive terminals, the battery hold down, and you're going to want to remove the battery out of the truck, because we are installing a battery relocation for the intake. The intake is going to be feeding off of the duct right here. So you're going to need a 10mm socket to remove the battery terminals. It's always a good idea to have a magnetic tray to keep your loose nuts and bolts so you don't lose them. Get the battery hold down removed. Just put it out of the way. You're going to want to remove this little clip down here from the battery tray. Pop that up. Make sure that's out of the way. Then you're going to want to remove these 4 bolts to get your battery tray out of the way. These are 13mm bolts. What you want to do now is go ahead and start disassembling the original intake tube. Remove that wire there, or hose there. You want to remove this hose clamp. That's that. Set that to the side. And you want to unplug your mass airflow sensor. Little red clip underneath you want to pop out. Now when I trick for these is you push in and wiggle and push out, it comes right out. There's also a clip that holds it on the back end here. You can get that popped off. Just like that. Set that wire to the side. I usually like tucking the wires behind other wires to keep them out of the way. And there's 2 bolts on the side here. I believe those are 8mm. And get your deep socket. Now with the air box out, you should be able to just get your battery tray right out of the way. Like you got another pigtail here that's still hanging on to it. Get a clip remover tool, put it up under there and pop it right out. Just like that. The battery tray should be loose now. Actually got a couple more right here on the back side of it. Pop those out. Telling you guys, this tool right here is a lifesaver, popping off those little plastic clips, all sorts. There's another one hiding over here on the front side, right down in here. Okay, so there's the factory battery tray out of the truck. All right, now you're going to want to remove the bracket that held in the factory intake box. Those are 10mm bolts as well. Then this ground wire needs to be relocated to this hole. It's an 8mm bolt. All right, in this negative battery terminal, you're going to want to remove the nut and the bracket that holds it down. You're going to want to remove that out of there. Flip your battery terminal around. Insert it from the opposite end. Now we want to move on over to the positive cable. All right, so we've got our battery extension cables laid out with the nuts and bolts and the heat shrink we're going to be putting on top of them, and as well as I like to use a blue Loctite on bolts that aren't going to be removed anytime soon. So when I install the extension cables onto the factory cables, I'll put a dab of blue Loctite on the threads of the bolts. That way I know it's a more secure connection. These are 10mm on both ends. I really like the blue gel Loctite. The gel doesn't run off the threads like the liquid one used to. I like this a lot better. So you want to take one of your extension cables, you want to keep it aligned as straight as possible. Alright, those are snugged up. So now you're going to want to take your heat shrink sleeve, slide it over, slide it down as far as you can to make sure you cover every bare metal. And you're going to want to get your heat gun or some sort of heat source. What you can do, since this heat shrink didn't tighten up as well on the cable as it should have, is you can add some electrical tape. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Alright, so you want to put both of your cables on top of one another like so, then onto the terminal. Alright, get your 10mm. Now you're going to want to get your new bracket that everything is going to mount to. This piece here. It's going to go down into the truck like so, right on the side of this frame rail. You know, set it to the side for a second because there are a couple lines and wires that you got to unclip again. Down in here, the AC line has a clip that's held onto the side, as well as another piece of this battery harness. All right, now that you got those out of the way, you want to go ahead and slide your bracket in. align it with these 3 mounting holes. Go ahead and put 2 of your factory bolts in the threaded holes just to hold the alignment. Now you want to get your new hardware that's supplied in the kit. Bolt, 2 washers, and the nylon locking nut. Get that down in your middle hole. Wash it from underneath. Get that started. At 13 millimeter from the top and bottom. Just snug that down tight. Now you can go ahead and remove the 13 millimeter bolts and the factory threaded holes. We'll install those later. Set those to the side. Now we're going to want to install the 2 side filters on the new intake box. Get those positioned into place. Get your Phillips head screwdriver and get the 3 provided screws started into their holes. Now you want to go ahead and turn the air box on its side. You're going to want to get the tube seal and install it here. You want to make sure that the lip is perfectly seated in that ring there. Alright, so we've got the intake seal ring installed there, as you can see. And you'll want to get your inlet piece. Get that into place. There's a spot here for a little plastic rivet that you don't want to go ahead and install at this time. You'll want to squeeze those 2 rivets together so they lock into place tightly. Now on the side here, there's another rubber plug that you can install. It's up to you. I recommend you keep it off for maximum airflow. S&B recommends the same as well. You want to get your 2 rubber grommets and press them into the holes on the side, like so. All right, now we're ready to get the intake box in its home. You want to get your 2 of your original 13 millimeter bolts. Go ahead and slide them through the holes where your grommets are, making sure that your grommets don't fall out. Then you want to get the other 2 and thread those in the holes of the new bracket, which they actually thread into the original holes in the frame rail, but they go through the new bracket. It's always a good idea to keep all your bolts loose until the absolute final step. That way you can slide everything around into its perfect spot. All right, so now that we've got our new air box in place, you're going to want to take your new intake tube and get the associated rubber pieces for the new MAF sensor location. You're going to want to get your stock air box. Locate the MAF sensor. There's two T20 Torx. You're going to want to carefully remove those screws. Alright, so I found that it's easier to stack everything on the mass airflow sensor and then feed it down into the new air tube. Get your new Phillips head screws. Alright, so once you've got the mass airflow sensor tightened down in the new spot, you want to get your new coupler, install it on the new tube, like so. You I'm gonna get the new clamps. Stretch those on, install those. That should be good enough. What you're gonna want to do now is insert the intake tube into this air box and rotate it. You slide this coupler grommet until you're perfectly aligned with the turbo inlet. Then you want to slide the coupler. You want to make sure that your coupler is just past this lip all the way around. You're going to want to position your clamps to where these hoses aren't going to be riding right on the screw part. All right, once you're confident that the coupler is on there well, you can go ahead and snug down your clamps. You need to go ahead and tighten down the 4 13mm bolts that we left loose in the earlier step in order to have some wiggle room on this. All right, now our box is tight. Let's go ahead and grab our new filter. Give the inside of your new air box a double check, make sure that you don't have any loose nuts, bolts, or debris in there before you install your filter. Go ahead and take your filter, put it down in the air box. You'll feel when it's right on the lip, which is right where you want it to be. Position your clamp in a convenient spot for you to be able to tighten it. All right, it is tight. Now you'll want to grab your old battery box. And remove the 2 8mm screws on the bottom. All right, so what you're going to want to do is after you remove the 8mm bolts, just take your screwdriver and pry right under these. It'll free up. This is in order to get your factory battery hold down rod out. I just want to pop that out and slide it out. We're going to be reusing this. All right, so once you get your new battery box, it goes into the truck in this position. You want to get your factory battery hold down rod. Make sure you insert it with the long end toward the front of the truck. Like so. Then you want to grab one of the provided zip ties. And just cut the excess zip tie off. And get your new battery box into location. All right, and get your supplied hardware. 13mm bolt with a washer. Start threading with bolting by hand. The 3 short bolts, 2 of them go in the bottom bracket. The 3rd short bolt goes in the side. Then the 1 long bolt goes in this hole here. Alright, now that the battery box is in its specific spot, you want to just get the battery cables moved out of the way as best as possible. And go ahead and drop your battery in. Go ahead and get your battery terminals on. Make sure your positive isn't touching anything that it can arc on. Get your factory battery hold down. And get your original 10mm nuts that hold up the battery hold down on. Go ahead and thread those on. Before you put your positive terminal on, just go ahead and get a visual double check, make sure that none of the wires are frayed or any of the new connections are touching one another. And go ahead and get it on. It's nice and tight. Go ahead and slide our battery terminal cover back on. This negative one doesn't want to seat all the way down since we flipped the battery terminal upside down, so just give it a couple light taps with the hammer. Now it's time for us to get the finished cover for the intake. I choose to put this on last because it's a nice clear cover. You don't want to get that scratched up or anything. All right, so you want to take the supplied gasket first. Start from one side. And just get your razor blade and cut off, do a little test fit first. So that's how it's going to go, right? You want to get your hardware ready. All right, go ahead and set it on top of the gasket. Now that you got all the bolts threaded in, just kind of align the acrylic cover best you can. And tighten down the corner that you feel is most aligned first. Now you want to take your mass airflow sensor wire and get the supplied extension and install it. That in first. Make sure you press in the little red clip after you install it. And plug your other end into the truck. Like so. Pop that in. Just route your wires however you prefer. All right, guys, well, here it is. Complete install of the S&B intake with battery relocation. Let me know what you guys think of the install. Any tips for future installs? I'm going to be doing a lot more of these. Stay tuned to the next couple videos. I'm going to be doing some reviews of the actual performance of the intake, driving videos, and things like that. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Please share and hit the bell notification for future videos. Thanks, guys.